All right, everyone, we're live today. It's Friday, and we have here at Coffee Chat with Sandy Maclean, a relationship coach. And Sandy, we're so excited to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Great.
A little early in the morning for me in BC, but I'm doing great.
You're like 2 hours behind us, I think, right? It's about 3 hours. Oh, wow. It's 7 in the morning. Oh, great. Good morning. Have your coffee. We have our coffee as well. All right, great. So let me introduce Sandy and then we'll get into it. We're so excited to have you. So a little bit about Sandy. She is a couples and trauma therapist, and she lives out of British Columbia, Canada. She has been in practice for 17 years, and she wants a master's in counseling psychology and a bachelor's in bio psychology. She's trained in Gottman method, EFT, couples therapy, and somatic experiencing. Did I say that right? Somatic?
Yes.
Great. All right. So Sandy also leads relationship transformation workshops with a special focus on supporting busy parents to thrive in their marriages after kids. So she has herself been married for 16 years. She's a mom with 2 kids and a therapy dog, Rusty. Yeah. His name is Rusty.
His name's
and
Rusty.
He's a therapy dog.
He's my youngest, my therapy dog, yeah.
Okay, there's actually a thing called the pet therapy, so is he trained for that?
He's not formally trained. He's a Bernedoodle, and I got him to live in my practice with me, and he's amazing. I don't think he's going to come in here today, but he just intuits where to go in a session, and he really helps, especially in couples therapy. If there's a reluctant husband, he comes and they see the dog, they're like, all right, she's okay, there's a dog here. It's really great.
Awesome. That's very cool. Yeah, I've heard of having pet therapy, especially with children. I think they use it a lot. So that's why I was wondering if she was also trained for that.
Bernedoodles in particular that's why I got them. They're almost famous for working with autistic kids in terms of their temperament and care. They're just very, very loving and human kind of centered.
Yeah, very nice. I love it. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the marriage counseling? Like what had you get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my practice in adult mental health, working with more anxiety, depression, and addictions. And when I went out on my own, I got trained in couples therapy. And, in terms of most recently, I'm focusing on these educational workshops where I take a lot of the pieces from couples therapy and just teach them to people rather than waiting for them to get to couples therapy. And the inspiration for that for me was really my own marriage. I was one of these people that was never sure I was going to get married. I was like, I wonder if I'll ever find someone. And I had the most amazing love story, chose my partner really, really well. We fell in love, got engaged in 7 months, married in 2 years. It was really like almost a dream I didn't dare to dream that came true. And 2 babies later, kind of 5 years later, and it was really, really intense. This beautiful marriage went sideways pretty quick. It's not that we were on the verge of divorce necessarily or fighting. It was just that I suddenly saw, oh gosh, like this is not good. And we were kind of in cycles of yuck and disconnection, and they were just compounding. And I'm a therapist and we live in a relatively small town. So I was like, well, let's go to couples therapy, or here, read this book. And he's not a therapy guy. And it's, he's like, so I'm going to go to therapy and hang out with you and your friend while you tell me what to do. No, thanks. Right. So I just decided, okay, I can't wait. I'm not going to wait until things are really bad. That's what I saw in my practice, is a lot of couples don't come in until it's really, really last days. And so I started to take all the things in my training from the couples therapy, from trauma therapy, and just kind of trying to mastermind how to apply it in my own marriage, kind of without him. I mean, with him, but just, okay, I'm going to really work on my side and apply these strategies and, coach myself essentially. And it hugely worked. He did get on board eventually, but really indirectly more than directly. He everything I shifted seemed to bring out the shifts I was wishing for him. Not every one of them, but enough of them that it was like a positive cycle. So that's what got me into teaching the workshops. And then realized in my couples therapy practice still today, people come in kind of 5 years after they've had a lot of injury. And a lot of those are after kids. And I just wanted to start to teach people the skills they could use up front before ever getting into a therapist's office. Yeah,
no, I love what you said there. Me personally as well, my husband and I hit a really big bump in the road as well. And it was being married. I think at that time it's 20 years now, but it was 17 years. It's like not too far long ago, about 3 years ago, where it wasn't working for us. And, we also seeked out couples therapy. And what actually ended up working for us better than couples therapy was us working on therapy for each of our individually. Mm-hmm. And that was really great because we became more self-aware so that we could be more other aware. Mm-hmm. And we had more clarity of what it is that we wanted out of a relationship, and we were better to communicate it with. So I would say one of the key things that helped us was communicating, which wasn't there before.
Yeah. And, I think that kids really do change the game. Like, I think a lot of people go through, I know we did, I don't know, depending on where you're from, but we had to do like the marriage, like the weekend where you go and you talk about, what your plan is, and you talk about, having kids, but you don't really go into kind of detail as to the different situations that come up. So I think it's such a big shift to go from like a couple to a family, and, baby one, maybe baby two, baby three, and you get so kind of caught up in it that you kind of lose that a bit of that connection, or it just changes. And I think that's just so brilliant, because so many people, like you said, Sandy, they wait until like marriage is on the last kind of strings before they seek help. So I think it's such an amazing thing to kind of go and sort of get that foresight and be able to apply those things before, so that you don't get to that point, or at least you can work through those bumps together, with techniques and tools that I think a lot of people don't often have or don't often think about.
Yeah, and I think it's surprising. People think, you maybe had enough communication skills to get by when you had lots of sleep and lots of time and lots of other things going on that were, and that all shifts with the kids, and it brings up these patterns that maybe were there for me. It's like stuff that was kind of there in my childhood, aspects of my personality, aspects of his, but it took kind of the pressure cooker plus all the stakes. You have such high stakes in terms of what you want with your kids, the parenting style you believe in. Like, there's so much to negotiate. I feel like you become sleep deprived people with no time, and you're essentially trying to co-run a business now. And the business is like, I want to raise the kids the best way possible. I want you to raise them the best way possible with me.
Yeah. I'm right in, like, I have a 2 and a 6-year-old, and the 2-year-old is still not great at sleep. So I'm still in that like sleep deprived state most days. And, my husband's wonderful, and, but I can also see, whereas before, if we had an argument, it might last the afternoon. Now it kind of lasts sometimes days before we're like, okay, this is done. Let's whatever. But we don't communicate it, or I don't know what it is. I think we're both maybe a bit more stubborn in kind of resolving it. And I think that has a lot to do with that, like with the sleep deprivation and just all the added stress, right? You just kind of, I don't know, but we changed. Like, I mean, when we were dating and first married, like I said, arguments lasted in the moment. And then we both of us are pretty laid back. So we're like, this is a dumb thing to argue about. Let's just whatever. Let's agree to disagree and we'd be okay. Whereas now I'm finding those fights lasting a lot longer. So it's just an interesting shift, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we wanted to go into, within our high performance coaching, a lot of our clients do bring up challenges that they have with their spouses. Mm-hmm. And some of the challenges are not only with their spouses, but also with in their professional life, with the relationship with their coworkers. I know a lot of my friends, we have kids that are now teens. So we have struggled with communicating with them. So one of the aspects that we talk about in clarity is who we are being and how we're showing up. And one of the things that we taught in our 5-day challenge to our group is, how is it that you're going to show up? What are the 3 words you're going to use? And even applies when you're coming into a social setting, or if you're going to come in and communicating with your child or your spouse. Are you going to come in being lovable? Are you going to come in being compassionate? Or are you coming in angry and defensive? So it's really being responsible of how you are communicating yourself, how you're going to come up and show up in that relationship, whatever it is that you're going to be speaking at. So did you want to add anything to that, how that works in your aspects?
Yeah, I love that. I love the 3 words. I'm going to use that today. That's really great. What 3 words? Like, it's just nice to get the mind sharp, right? Which I guess is the whole point of the word clarity. It's like, let's bring it right down. In terms of my relationship work, the training I do, I think the thing that applies most to clarity is really connecting with your why. Because I'm really telling people, stop waiting for your partner. Stop saying, our communication isn't working because you're doing this, this, and this. I'm saying everything in a relationship is a loop. It's this, the emotional system is looping between you. And it doesn't actually matter if they're responsible for 80% and you've got 20 because, you know, they've got more issues than you. It's usually what people think.
Of course they do.
It's actually that if you take out your 20% and you nail it and you totally get off that wheel, the whole cycle shifts out of it. So but that you have to be really grown up. You have to be really an adult. And there's other factors that take over: our stubbornness, our hurt feelings, our fatigue. There's things that take over that make us less willing to start always with, like, I'm going to start with me. I'm going to do everything on my side and not focus on you. So for me, the clarity piece really comes down to connecting all the time with your why. And I think this, you know, parents and anybody who's got high stakes in their relationship, where you're not just dating, you can't just be like, this is getting annoying, I'm going to go date someone else. There's a lot on the line. There's a lot of things you care about and you believe in that you're going to want 10 years down the road to be in a healthy, amazing relationship with the person you're raising kids with right now. Like, there's a lot of reasons for that. But if you don't connect with those reasons, then they're not going to be available to you when you're triggered, when you want to blame, when you want to focus on what they're doing. So the clarity piece for me is around, like, every day, why am I doing this for me? It seems like, oh, I'm letting him off the hook if I don't but actually I picture my little people, my babies, wanting them to not grow up in a house where people are arguing, wanting to take that super, super seriously, wanting that family that I didn't have. I grew up with divorced parents, so I don't want fighting. I didn't want my kids to have fighting parents or divorced parents. And just connecting with that, I was like, what wouldn't I do if it's all up to me? You know, and I was going to take on all the shifts I could take on. What wouldn't I do? And that clarity for me comes with connecting with the why. So it's often where I start with people is, you have to have a really big why to grow up in those moments when you want to stoop lower.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, I was going to say that even in my relationship, I also came from a divorced family. And so it was also, those thoughts were also there, like, I need to make this work. Like, I am not going to have this end up like what happened with my parents. And so it was like, because of that, I think we were really making it work for each other. And what I noticed when communication started to shift was that we became more generous with each other. Yeah. And before it was all about me. Like, I was defensive. I was like, no, you can't control me. No, you can't tell me what to do. It was very defensive. But once I let that go, and I was coming like, oh, he's asking this because he wants to spend time with me. He wants to go out as a family because he wants to have a family quality time together. Once I got related with where he was coming from, then it made a huge shift in our relationship. And I see that very common. It's like we're very much in our own world, in our own head, and we forget that where the other person is also coming from.
Yeah, and we bounce off their surface style. instead of like what you're doing right there, which is pretty incredible, is just going a little bit deeper and kind of like what's underneath. And there might be some nuisance kind of ways they're approaching you about it, but it's like connecting with that deeper intention and being generous that way on their part also evokes a return of that, you sort of going for something deeper there. That's really beautiful, Maureen.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking, Sandy, about that, about the why, I think about how my kids are sort of perceiving and learning from our relationship and communication style. But another thing that came up for me, probably like last year, I don't know what it was. I had a lot of friends that their kids were going off to university and stuff, and they were saying like, it's like we're roommates, like we don't even know each other, that empty nest.
Yeah.
And that became a why for me. Like last year, I was kind of like, it's so easy to be all in on your kids and forget that intimate relationship with your partner. And it's hard. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but that became a why for me as well. Just making sure that we're carving out a little bit of time to stay connected as a couple. Because even though my kids are so young, I don't know, I was very, very triggered kind of by that. I don't know why, but so we did like, Monday date nights before the lockdowns. We would go to our local pub after the kids were asleep, and it was like wing night, and we'd grab a drink and we would just talk. And we're like, oh my gosh, we haven't done this in like 6 years. But it was amazing because I kind of felt like we were dating again. And, that idea of a date night, I know people throw it around, but I think it's so important, and to keep that part of the relationship going for the future. So part of my why is our future together as well.
Yeah.
I love what you said there, Alexis. That takes us into our next question when we talk about energy. Like, what kind of energy are we going to bring in to that relationship? So, Sandy, in the high performance coaching, we also talk about energy and how we want to also come into any room. How do we want to create things? What do we want it to be? A happy setting? Do we want it to be intense? Do we want it to be fun? So whatever it is, whatever energy that you want to bring, that's also tied into your clarity. That the energy is really important. It's also about taking care of ourselves. When we're run down, we're tired, we're not eating well, we're not sleeping well. It has an effect on how we're, unfortunately, what happens is we take it out on our close loved ones. Then we show up our best self when we are with other people outside of our home. And so what would you say about that in your workshops when you talk to your clients? How do you relate energy in those?
Yeah, probably the one of the tie-ins for energy is, and I use this in the workshops and in my practice, is the really having a gratitude practice for your partner. We talk, most people have heard of kind of a gratitude practice, 5 things you're grateful for today. And for me, it's about trying to, in your day, when you're not together, training yourself to put your mind on the things you're really, really grateful for, things that you will take for granted. I mean, our brains are wired to focus on the problem and to dismiss everything that's fine, because we just evolved in survival and scarcity. And so you have to actually redirect your intention to remember. And I'll even give couples that are struggling with that an exercise. I'll say, I want you to imagine almost like right in the middle where you can't think of anything good. I want you to think, what would happen in 10 minutes if you suddenly found out this person was in a coma and you weren't sure they were going to come out? What would you think about this right in that moment? What are the things you would miss desperately about this human? What are the things that you love that you wouldn't necessarily have in any other relationship? Or, just connect with big picture and little picture things when you're not together, because then you're feeding the energy of that love. So it's really about setting, instead of waiting and being just in your own bubble when you're by yourself, and sometimes in your head or with your other friends, frustrated with your spouse, thinking, I have to actually train myself to remember how lucky I am, how fabulous this human is. And yes, we're all flawed, but really they're amazing in so many ways. And you wouldn't be with them if they weren't, and putting your attention there will bring more of that out. So that's, to me, is that connected the energy thing?
Yeah, it does. Because what we also talk about is having triggers, emotional triggers. So if you're every time you walk in through a door, how is it that you're going to connect with whoever you're going to be in front of? I don't know, Alexis, you can add on to that for the energy.
Yeah, really about being responsible for the energy as opposed to just being reactive. And I think that's so good is you know, it's so funny. I'm learning so much, and I love this. Like relationships, like talk is my jam. Like I just love it because I think it's just the life source of life, you know. But yeah, you know, that's so good because I think we don't often, and especially not in a challenging situation, to be able to stop and think. We are able to, but I don't think we're necessarily willing to. But I think that would be like you would shift your energy and what you're sort of bringing into that like so quickly if you were just like reminding yourself of like the good, because in tough times, in challenging situations, like your mind goes to that negative all the time, and then you start stacking negative on negative on negative, and before you know it, you're just like like it's like a volcano, right? Yeah. But to take a moment, and I mean, that is what we talk about, is being responsible, is that we can be affected by others or we can be affected by situations, but we also can choose how we are going to contribute to the situation. And I think that's really tough. I think it's tough for a lot of people, myself included, but something for sure to work on.
Yeah, I see them as like they're lifetime practices. You don't arrive at the spot where your mind's not just landing on gratitude all the time and you're really in touch with it. You have to, it's like a living practice that, that's why it's good to be in kind of groups like this one, and it's just to keep yourself inspired.
Exactly. One of the other things that we also cover is courage. And this is, I believe, one of the top things that most people struggle with, especially in relationships. And that comes from like they hold back, they're afraid to say something, how the reaction will be, or they avoid it, you know, they either withhold it or they avoid it. Or they what is the other one? They say gaslighting because they're afraid of what the reaction will be. So they will pretend like it doesn't even exist. Whatever they're saying, they'll totally turn it around because they don't want to face it. So I feel like that's one of the biggest factors, is having courage to really speak your truth or really have the conversation with, whether, you know, it's even in a workplace, having the courage to speak to your boss if there's something that's not working for you, or you want to ask for that raise. People operate out of a fear, I would say. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And yet I often tell people, if you're getting sort of an intuitive hit that you're worried about their reaction, slow down and learn from that, because there's probably actually, you know, some of it might just be that you were trained in your family of origin not to have conflicts at all. But there often is, sometimes you'll oscillate between avoiding and then kind of jumping to a kind of communication that is actually going to bring out the worst, and then it proves why they should avoid next time. So they're kind of oscillating between not enough clear communication, and then when they do speak up, it goes south and it sort of proves their case. So then they're just back to this shutdown. And I think that when I think of courage, I actually think of, I think this is in love relationships and in any collegial relationships, anything that's a bit sensitive, is that there's a surface experience and then there's a more vulnerable one. So we might be irritated with our partner, but it takes a while to be still with yourself to go, why am I irritated? Is there a softer feeling underneath? What's the softer feeling? This is, you know, from Sue Johnson's EFT work. What's going on underneath? And often if you communicate about the frustration, so you have courage to say, I'm frustrated, I need this, I need that, you're actually going to bring out defensiveness and more shutdown from your partner. And that sort of proves why I guess you can't communicate with them. So there you're stuck in that cycle. Whereas to have the courage to ask yourself, what's going on underneath? You know, the softer, more vulnerable emotion, and getting in touch with it before you communicate. It is a huge game changer in relationship. And it's hard because, you know, when I do that in my relationship, it's like, I feel really embarrassed. I'm really defensive about, so I have like a master's degree. I got 100% in calculus in university. I can't seem to shut cupboards doors behind me. It's really ridiculous. I'm sure I can, but I can't get it so that I'm 100% going to do that every time. I'm just kind of a dreamer, and I walk through space in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's like a simple thing, drives my husband totally crazy. He's a clean kitchen guy. I know a lot of people out there like, I wish my husband was the clean kitchen guy, but I'm the messy kitchen guy in my house. And this piece around, why am I so defensive to hear about it? I actually agree. You just heard me chuckling about this. I think it's kind of ridiculous that I don't do better on that myself. But when he brings it up, I feel kind of shame. I feel pathetic. I feel like that's like the inside emotion. It's not really logical, but that's how it feels inside. And that's what makes me defensive. So if I take a second and connect with that and go, yeah, I actually intellectually agree with him, but the tone that's coming at me is making me feel like unlovable, unworthy, and it's not that you necessarily speak in these real relationship-y kind of speak to your spouse, but knowing that softer spot for yourself and then trying to tune into your partner's softer motive, then you get under that anger. And suddenly if I come to him and say, it's hard for me to take that in right now, it's making me feel really like kind of as if I'm not, like, you don't even love me, like I just feel sort of, and I know you do, but I feel it makes me feel kind of like insecure and like I want to curl up. That's really different than if I go to him, whatever, dude, like, do you see your underwear? Like that's the vibe on the outside might be that, but underneath it's like, I'm hurt by that because it brings up this feeling of not being good enough, which makes me insecure. And it's not super rational. There's layers to that, but it's if I have the courage to feel that softer feeling and come forward with that in some way, I'm going to bring out a totally different response from my partner than if I do the first one, which is like more like the back off.
Yeah.
So like that's for me, courage is the courage to be vulnerable. It's the Brene Brown stuff. It's like, it's so much easier to say than do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, or actually, no, I want to ask you, because if you're tapping into this, that vulnerable side, and then it's not received well by the other person, or I think this leads to also expectations. If your expectations aren't met, you're like, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable and it's going to be a good situation. And it's not. I think that too leads to then the next time you're not wanting to, but also kind of what would your advice be in that situation when you feel like you're trying, or you feel like you're trying to sort of dig deep, be vulnerable, and it's not received in the way that you were hoping? How do you push through that situation? Or what would your advice be there? Because I know I hear this often, like, I'm trying, but they're not. And sometimes
such a good question. Brilliant question. I want you guys to come into my challenge next week. We'll do this again.
Yes.
Great questions. That's the practice, because you think, oh, I'll do this, I'll have courage once, but really it's a cycle. So you can come, and especially if I've been doing the other version a lot and now I go vulnerable once, my partner knows me and he knows that there's also, he's probably picking up on the other irritation as well. Like we're very intuitive and he's familiar with me. So he might be defensive as if I haven't changed. So I reach for this change, but he's still saying like, oh yeah, there you go. Like, and sometimes he comes out with some real 12-year-old mean older brother stuff, right? He's like, there you go with your vulnerability.
Oh.
It sounds like just not quite, but it feels like that to me. Where he's like,
we had somebody just comment. Yeah, we just had somebody just commented, and building courage, practice to putting aside that vulnerability equals weakness.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. So I would say there's a couple things. One is stay the course. Connect with your truth, but not with the agenda that if you're going to change your side of the cycle, you have to stay and commit. And really it's a discipline of mind, because you can't just dip your toe in the water and then go, see, it didn't work anyway. It's like, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to stay here with my vulnerability, and I'm going to connect to your vulnerability. So behind every one of their distance or their brick wall that is up or their anger or their shutdown is going to be some vulnerable feelings too. And trying to do work when you're not in that conversation to think of that cycle between you and then figuring out, what do I guess is going on? If I had to guess, what would be the guess of what's probably going on underneath for them? You know, my partner ends up feeling kind of overwhelmed and abandoned a bit because I'm a career person. I'm really focused in my work. And he actually probably could totally live with the cupboards thing and just love me through it. It's not on a really as big of a deal as it seems, but it's connected to him to like, he doesn't feel important. He feels sometimes like I could just be in a tunnel vision of my work and not, like, he doesn't matter. So when I connect to his vulnerability, even if he doesn't feel like connecting to his vulnerability, but I imagine that while I'm doing my work for mine, then I can connect to the fact that, yeah, he's not going to soften right away just because I soften. I'm going to stay in the vulnerability, but also relate to his. So it makes it safer for him to drop out. And that might not be in one conversation, but it's kind of over a bigger arch.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's hard work. Like, I feel like I'm more, I was asking for a friend earlier, but like, I think I am the one that dips it. Like, I'll be like, okay, Alexis, like you're trained and you know what I mean? Like as a life coach, as a high performance, I have all these tools that I can reach for, and I do, but I reach for them when they don't work. I'm like, fine. And away you go. Right. And you're back to the same cycle, I think. And it's hard, I think, but no, I think that's great advice. And just that reminder too, you can't just, be vulnerable for half a second. And then when it doesn't work, you're out.
And that's why you need the motivation. That's why you need, when you're not in this, to be thinking, okay, this is a month where every day I'm going to connect with the why of this. Yeah. Why it's worth staying in the more like grown-up stance, collecting it. I mean, usually I'm too busy of a person to be at my best, but I now have got myself, so when things go sideways, I use it as a flag, a little like Zen bell, I call it. It's like a little like ding, 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 ding. Time to slow down and reach for something completely different than what it looks like is happening. And, we'll get through, we'll be in the middle of something that looks like it's going to be messy. And then I'm now, after years of practice, and I have to keep it up, I can sort of go, okay, and just start connecting to his vulnerability first as I connect to my own.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I want to ask just one before we move on from courage. I feel like another issue is when one partner has, say, something, something's not working. The challenge is, how do you approach it, or how do you bring it up? And it's that fear of what the reaction is going to be that makes them not do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice into if communication is not great and they want to improve it? Mm-hmm. They're afraid of just bringing it up. How would one part of the couple just bring it up if they don't feel as though the other half is kind of on the same page?
Yeah, the Gottmans have some great research on that. They talk about that the actual startup, the way things start up, is a huge predictor of how the conversation is going to go. Oh. And also that our brains are actually wired. We need 5 to 1. We need at least 5 to 1 positive to negative, just interaction about ourselves, feedback, in order to be open. So I would say there's 2 parts. There's the actual conversation, but then there's the global gratitude practice, which ideally you'd be speaking those gratitudes more. Yeah. So the person, essentially our primitive brain goes into defensiveness as soon as we can't tell if we're safe. And in love, that can just be, this person is, not sure it's the absence of unconditional love, really, because we know we're flawed and our partner knows they're flawed. And if they don't feel that sense like a little kid wants, of just like, I'm lovable, like we just want that. And it's not because we are like, we don't deserve it necessarily. We want it just for being us, right? That's what feels safest. So we can help put our partner in that space on a regular basis by just practicing that gratitude in our thinking inside and then speaking that. So I think it's your partner might, has different levels. Everyone has a different level of threshold of what they can tolerate and what they get defensive about. Mm-hmm. So making sure that there's a global environment where they know that you think they're amazing and you see all their contributions. Especially with parents, I often talk about, you're both at 300% Now, compared to your pre-kid self and what you thought of as busy life, you're at 300%. You might be at 400 and you wish your partner was with you at 4, but they're at 3.
Yeah.
And for them, they're at 300%. And if they just hear the thing they're not doing right, it's not, they can't actually tolerate it because they're already so maxed. So it just brings up this, I guess I can never get it right feeling. Mm-hmm. So I think the work outside of the conversation itself of just establishing that that person really feels important and known, and like you see all the ways that they're amazing as a baseline, and then starting up the conversation, you know, with that disarming kind of thing. It looks different for different couples, but how to, you know, how to basically say, I see you, I see everything you're in and what's going on. I would love to have a conversation about X, Y, or Z. I'm a little nervous to have that conversation because I know it can come off like I'm actually think you suck and you don't suck. And I know we've done that before. I don't want to have that, but I also don't want to avoid it because if I avoid it, it'll make me distant and I don't want to be distant. You know, so if you connect it back to those core attachment principles of I love you, I don't want to be far away from you, you're important to me, and I see you, you know, it like, you know, without being a therapist about it, I think if you just sort of keep that in mind, the person can go, okay, and they may not be ready. It's nice to give some people choices. So you say, I feel like this is a conversation we need to have, but I really want it to be a loving thing. We might not agree, but I'd like us to be able to have a conversation when we're in a space where we can be on the same team as a couple, even if we don't agree. And then give the person a little bit of time to get their brain around it. If they, you know, some people need a bit of time to say, okay, well, I'm not up for that right now, but let's do that tonight, or let's do that on Saturday morning, you know, and then it gives people sort of a time to get conscious. So they're going to be less defensive and more open and bring their best foot forward into that sensitive subject.
That's great advice.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And we could go for hours talking about courage and how it affects relationships. But thank you for putting that together, being responsible of how we're going to show up. And then 9 out of 10 times, like you said, you know, what we're feeling, the opposite person is also feeling. So having the courage to get that going. So one of the next things that we talk about is also productivity. Increasing our productivity, and that's what high performers are always striving for, is how we can accomplish more in less time. And what we have found, Alexis and I, with our clients, is that we forget about the important relationships that we have and incorporating time for that. So like one of the things that I took on in 2020 was really blocking out my calendar for a time with my family, my friends, especially time with my husband, at least once a week, to just me and him just have our time before I put anything else on my calendar. So that's part of what we took on as what I wanted to take on as far as productivity. So what is it that you teach in your workshops around that?
Gosh, that's so good. I'm just thinking, I'm in launching my course right now for my free challenge next week. I just think my husband needs a little more time. I need to block him in next time I do a launch.
It's hard, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's so key to prioritize. There's a few things. I think it's good to build in rituals of connection that are small. A lot of times we get bogged down with trying to create a really special big date night. You know, parents of little kids, I often say, what about getting a 1-hour babysitter at 5 o'clock on a Thursday every week? 1 hour, 1.5 hours, you know, like so small that you don't have the mom or dad guilt. You don't have this idea of like, well, you know, I'm working all day and I don't, you know, so small, you're still going to be putting them to bed. It's not actually a huge game changer for them. But it's actually, now that you're really busy, that's a huge window, and it's not at 9 p.m. when you're just bagged and need to fall asleep or be checked out. So that's to me like blocking in micro times. I in my own life, I realized I need to say yes every morning to coffee with my partner. Like really, you know, it matters to him. It really matters to him. And it was one of the early shifts when I was first shifting us out of conflict, when he said, I tell this story a lot, he said, he came up to me, he's like, so do you want to sit and have a coffee and talk about the renovation? And I already knew that we didn't agree on this renovation at all. And I just was like, no, and I like some fast blow off. And then he got very agitated. And I don't know, but I think he would then jump into like the cupboards and like why I'm not mess cleaner in the kitchen. And I just went, it was in the middle of this process where I was like, wait a second. Okay, I'm going to pause in my head, back us up. So I just said, okay, wait, let's back this up. What I should have said is, I love you. I absolutely want to have time with you and sit and have coffee. I'm not really up for the renovation conversation this minute, but yes to you. Yes to having coffee. And ever since that work that day, I actually have been really trying hard to, sorry, I'm just going to silence this guy. Really trying hard to just say yes to those little dates. I think of them now as little dates. I can stay up late and work in the night, and I'm trying really hard to say yes to going to bed at the same time. Things like that. I think if we look for big opportunities, it slips away. If we realize every day I need to find the mini dates of our life, and then add in some big ones, but certain rituals that are in that connection every day. To me, that, and I love the blocking of time for that, putting it first rather than getting everything done, and then finally my partner gets some of me.
Yeah, I think that's super key is what's important to them too. And I think we often forget this. We have this, big date planned or whatever it is. And then again, going back to expectation, if it doesn't go exactly as you are thinking it will, we are disappointed and it stops us from doing it again. But, coffee, maybe like the thing that's super important that your husband loves to do with you and to you, where it's like, oh my God, mornings are crazy. I don't have time to have the coffee, but that's what makes him feel connected or makes him feel loved, or that's the time he loves with you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to think of those things about our partner. Mm-hmm. My husband's a huge soccer fan. And when we were dating, I watched every game, I cheered for his team. And then as we had kids, and he's like, oh, babe, watch this play. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Somebody's throwing up, somebody's crying. I don't care about soccer. But it's so important to him. And when I just am like, oh, yeah, let me see it. And then I may not be that excited about it. Yeah. But I know it's important to him, and he loves to share that with me.
Yeah.
So I've tried
and it's kind of like you're saying you matter, instead of, it's like soccer might not matter to you right now, but you matter. And if I realize that's what the soccer ask is really about, then I for sure want them to have had lots of experiences of knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. No, I love it.
Great example.
Because when we talk about activity too, it's really about, it's not just about, ticking things off your to-do list. It's about doing the things that matter. It's about doing the right things, more of the right things. And I think that's so applicable to relationships when we're talking about that is we may say, well, look, I do the laundry, I make you dinner every night. Like, these are the things that I do for you. But they may not be the right things that build that connection. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to be taken out of that, and that's applicable for relationships as well.
And that's a perfect segue into our last thing that we also incorporate in our coaching is influence. Mm-hmm. So inspiring one another. So where we talk about influence in our relationship, and it's not only our relationship with our spouses, I want to also bring it to like our children, with our colleagues. It's really being an inspiration for each other, or really encouraging them. So what people really would, the best way I find to really be an influence in someone's life is really getting what it is, who they are, and acknowledging that, and then inspiring them further. And I feel like we're not doing enough of that these days. We're so in our own world and what we need to get done and how it needs to be done that we are not related to what other people are wanting to get done for themselves. So what would you say in relationships that you've seen, that people have come to you, how does influence come in play?
Yeah. They're all so great. I love the breakdown of this model that you have. Influence, there's two parts. One I've already spoken about, which I can't say enough, which is stop waiting for your partner to change. Stop waiting for them to read the book or come to the thing. You focus on your side. And even if they never read the book, you're going to just find the influence is so powerful, because they chose you. The stakes are high. They want a happy, loving home as well, even if they're not always acting like it. So the idea that you rise up and you be the love, you reset the bad vibes into good vibes. You do that as much as you can, and without hesitation or waiting for it to come back. It comes back. It always comes back. It's very reliable. I mean, ultimately, you always could have the choice later to leave, but to set up that you're not going to think about them doing it and then you're like tit for tat. It's just, I'm going to commit everything I have to my side. Most times, your relationship will come back through that influence, even if it's indirect. So I think that's a huge one. The other one is when you were saying the generosity. The skill I think that we could all do more of is emotional validation. That when this EFFT, emotionally focused family therapy counselors that I did some training with out of Toronto, they had this beautiful model where they talked about when someone's in a big emotion, it's like they're up an elevator and they can't actually reason until they get to they can't problem solve or reason until they get to the ground floor. And the only thing that brings any of us down that elevator is believing that someone understands us and that they get it, that we are known and seen, you know? And so most of us focus on the content of what's going on, and we think, well, you're feeling that way, but you're having this faulty analysis. I'll fix the analysis and that maybe will get you down that elevator. But really being able to just tune in and validate, yes, you feel this way because this, because that. I totally get it. Not that I agree with the logic, but just that I see you and I know what it's like to be you. And our partners and our colleagues and our children, you know, I got home from that conference and my son was really mad at my husband and they got in a big fight and he was down in his room. I was trying to help him shift gears and he was just up the elevator going further up. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do the elevator, validate. And he said to me, you love Lily more than you love me, which is his sister. And it's hard to validate. You think, well, I can't validate that. That's not true. I don't want to validate that. But okay, the principle is I'm going to validate the feeling. That must be so hard. You know, I get where you're coming from. How for you see Lily never gets in trouble. You're getting in trouble. It feels like we don't even love you. That's terrible. That is so hard for you. Like that's just validating his experience of it, not the content. And later, once he's down the elevator, just like by the by, we totally love you. This like you both amazing. There's no comparison. But he doesn't need to hear that, because if I argue with that at first, all I'm doing is invalidating him. So that's serving what they need. It's like this skill of validation for me gives you a lot of influence over somebody's getting down that elevator and feeling like they can trust you and then move into something new.
I love that because it's our tendency is to say, calm down. If you say calm down, you know that takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, like penthouse button.
Yeah. If you want to take it to like out the roof, yeah, say calm down. Yeah. So no, I love that you talk about validating the feelings. And it's like you said, it's not only with just our spouse, it's even with coworkers. If they're frustrated, just say, yeah, I can see that you're frustrated. And I can imagine that it is. If it was up to you, how would you change it? How would you do it? You know, like really, and you'll notice that people just want to be gotten, right? I just want to be heard. It's like they're so frustrated that they're not being heard that they get to that level and they don't know how else to express it. So it's just getting to that level with them, understanding, validating what it is. Yeah, I love that. And it's a huge part of in the high performance coaching and influence is how to connect with people and then also inspire them. Yes. So loved what you said there. I know we're coming to the end. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add with the validate, most of us validate briefly and then we jump to problem solve. So the art is how to stay. Even a room full of therapists had a hard time staying for 2-3 minutes. Just the sentence they gave us, which I'd love to share, is that makes all the sense in the world. because. So you're dropping into the world. They're not just like, oh, I get that you feel angry. It's like, yeah, you feel angry. You're so frustrated because this, because that. And if you get it wrong, you're just guessing. They'll correct you. You just validate that. That's perfect. It's fine. You don't have to get it right, but you're just dropping into their world in a way that feels thorough enough that they believe you. You can't just go, yeah, I get you're angry in your mind.
Yeah.
You have no right to be angry.
Yeah. There was Alexis sent me something about Chris Voss, who does a lot of negotiating, and to influence them, it's really meeting them in the conversations that they are having. So it's almost like saying, well, it seems like, or it feels like, it sounds like that you're saying this, and you keep saying that until you get it right. Yeah. So it's, I think, along the same lines, and until you match what it is that they're feeling or saying or what it seems like, until you do that, then there's no connection. They feel completely disconnected from you until you get them. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Now, I did want to move on to your the 5-day relationship challenge that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know for the audience, I know it's starting on Monday, and it's I believe it's at 1 o'clock Eastern time, right?
9 a.m. Pacific, 10, 11, 12 Eastern.
12 Eastern. Okay, 12 Eastern.
And we're starting kind of now. I'm going to be doing some bonus trainings this weekend. Okay. So it's 5-day relationship reset. You don't need the exercises are for you individually. Both partners or one person can come and have just a good impact. Some of these tools we're going to go into more depth with, and others. And we're just, every day I'm going to do a little teaching and then offer some homework. There'll be a reflection. You don't need a huge amount of time. A lot of it is stuff you can kind of mill about in your mind and in your awareness in the day, throughout your day, and little in between moments. 5 days in a row, and there's the group's getting some people in it. We're getting some momentum going. It's really great. It's officially for parents because I want to give a safe space for that, but certainly anybody who's busy, who can't solve their relationship by having lots and lots of date nights or hours and hours. It's really meant to be you're in a long-term committed relationship. The stakes are high, and you're a busy enough person that you need efficient solutions.
Great. Can you tell us, like, each day, what topic you're covering?
Oh, I actually can't pull that up right this second.
You don't have it right now.
You can go, if you sign on to the Facebook group, you'll see it. It's outlined. It's just not that exact map, isn't there? I wish it was, but I've been in a world of just connecting all the technology this week, so it's just not fresh to kind of ream off right here.
Yeah.
You can go to, sandymaclean.net is my website. I think you're linking to that. And yes, you can follow the Join the Challenge. You can read about me. And it goes through all the different pieces it'll cover. And when you sign up on the Facebook group, it's like day 1, day 2, day 3, you'll see it.
Yes. Yep. And I'm there. So for those of you who are listening, it's invitation.sandymaclean.net. And really excited. I'm excited to be a part of it as well. I don't know if I can call in or join in for every single one, but you will have the recordings there too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So they're going to be lives on the Facebook group, and then people can watch them anytime. And, ideally stay on it sort of within 24 hours, but it's a pop-up group. So the group's not going to last forever. It's going to come down kind of a Tuesday of the week after. If you come into the group from this, make sure to tell me that you're coming from this group, because when you sign into the group, there's an opportunity to say, how you heard about the group. So I'd love to know, and if there's a little pod from your guys' world over there, I'd love to know who they are.
Yeah, and let us know, like, how many we, come in from our group. I'd love to know how much of our audience were. I sent out a poll, and a lot of our audience was really interested in the spouse. And there was a couple of people who were the relationship with coworkers, but mostly it was spouse. So, and I'm sure with this pandemic going on, people stuck at home, it's probably raised up a lot of things within the relationships in their home. And then for some, it could have been a great time for them to reconnect and work on the relationship. So I think it's in some kind of eerie way, it's kind of great that we had this time to sit down, reflect, be at home with our family and children, slow down, like really slow down and spend time with each other.
And I think it's funny that you mentioned, like, I saw a post that just made me laugh. Like, everyone's working from home now, and this woman had, I think it was a tweet or something, but she was like, I overheard my husband on a Zoom meeting, and she's like, I can't believe I'm married to a let's circle back guy. You know, like, we see this other side that we don't often see, like the work spouse or how they are. I mean, I know my husband's like, what are you talking? Why are you locked in that office? And he goes, no, you know, and I share it with him, but it's just funny to sort of see that other side. So I think now is such a good opportunity to take your challenge, Sandy, because like you said, we have the time. We're kind of seeing a different side sometimes to our spouse, because not all of us are home every day, all day with each other. And like I said early in the beginning, I think relationships are really just like it's the key to life. It's just that, like, it's a thing that makes life worth living. Like, you can't say it's work or anything else. I think it's those relationships that we create. And for me, I know those personal, intimate relationships with my husband, my kids, my mom and dad, my girlfriends, like, those really close relationships are so important. And when they're out of sync, I think that spills into all those other important aspects of life as well. So, you know, thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I think it's so beneficial. I know not everybody can always either afford therapy or think that they're at that point. And I think sometimes, you know, when generous people like yourself offer these weeks, you know, where you have really valuable training and really valuable sort of insights and tools for them, I think it can be a huge game changer in their relationship and in their life. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for being here with us today. I know I got a lot, my brain is like, you know, circling through of, all right, you know, push through and things that I'm going to do and apply to my own relationships just starting now. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, same for me. Like, I'm thinking, I haven't thanked my husband lately. I should probably be acknowledging him. He does a lot. Like, he does a lot with the kids. You know, I have my job. I run this business. So like you, I've been really busy, and I don't give him enough time. So, but thank you for that. It's a reminder. And, you know, although we're in the same house and always we look like we're spending a lot of time together, sometimes you can be in the same house and totally not be connected.
Yeah.
And that can happen too. So we can be responsible for how we want to create that connection. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. This is so fun. I want to do this more.
Yes, we definitely should do this again. Definitely. Okay, so I wanted to remind everyone who's listening, Sandy Maclean is here today. She starts her 5-day challenge next week on Monday. It's 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And it's every day for 30 minutes for 5 days. You can sign up at invitation.sandymaclean.net. So make sure you go sign up. When you get into that Facebook group, let her know that you heard about her from here, from Goal Set Coach, from your Alexis and Maureen. And thanks again, Sandy. Really appreciate it. So sorry it was so early in the morning for you.
No, it's great. Now I'm all spooked. I'm all energized.
But I think it's a great way to start out the weekend. Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. We all see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, Sandy.
Bye.